I believe that it is so important to sift through the noise that we are exposed to in any day in order for us to live peaceful lives, right? We are so bombarded with information at any point in time that if we are not careful, we will allow anything and everything to come through our ears and down into our soul and find root in our souls, that at the end of the day, we realize that we've allowed things that are destroying us, right? Or that are giving us unrest in our souls. Or we allow ourselves to be dragged into different spaces or dragged into different things that require our attention at any point in time at the expense of our own plans. And ultimately, we lack peace because we gave ourselves to too many things that didn't align to our initial plans that we had, maybe for a day, a month, a year, right? So at the end of the day, you recognize that you did a whole lot of things, but nothing of the things that you planned for yourself, because you allowed yourself to be dragged into different spaces. And I found that if I'm not careful, I fall into the same trap as well. So once in a while, I take stock of where I am, maybe in a day or in a month or in a week, to see whether I'm still acting on the plans or the goals that I set for myself at the beginning of the day, at the beginning of the week, or at the beginning of the month, right? To make sure that by the end of the year, I actually can say, well done, Pulaa, you've done well. You achieved the goals that you set for yourself this year. And it takes taking care of each day in order to make sure that your yearly goals are achieved. So today I want to talk to you about the 3 practical ways that I use to sift through the noise in order to have inner peace. I am Pulaa Montz, your inner voice magnified. So the first way that I use in order to make sure I sift through the information that comes through my ears, or to sift through the things that need my attention, is that every single morning I wake up at 4 in order to have my quiet time. At that time, that's the one time that I can control in a day, and where my husband is still sleeping, so I can just be alone with my thoughts and God, right? So quiet time for me is the time for prayer, is the time to study the Bible and really understand the message that I'm getting for the day, right? And then it is also time for meditation, because prayer and meditation goes hand in hand. When you pray, you're asking God for things, you're asking God for clarity, you're asking God for blessings, or whatever it is that you're asking for. But with meditation, you basically keeping quiet and allowing God to respond to all these things that you've been asking him. And also when you're studying the Bible, as you study, there are messages that you get, but then you need that moment of meditation to make sure that what you are studying makes sense to you, what you're studying makes sense to what you are going through in a moment. So meditation is also important in that moment. And quiet time for me has given me so much clarity about my life. And I love the fact that immediately after I get up from where I'm sitting, when I have my quiet time, then I've got a tone that is set for the day. I don't start my day confused. I know exactly who I am once I'm from my quiet time, right? I decide who I am. I align my definition of who I am with who God says I am, so that when I start hearing outside noise, when I start hearing negativity, or when I start hearing confirmation, compliments, either those compliments are confirming what I already know from my quiet time. And if I'm receiving negative feedback, I will know whether it's constructive feedback, or this is feedback just to make me feel bad, right? So I can sift through the information that I receive as a result of being in a quiet time early in the morning, where my mind has not thought about any of the problems that I have or any of the things that are happening in our country. I'm still a bit drowsy by the time I get to the other room, for my quiet time. So literally the only thing that I can think about at that point, I mean, in prayer, we know we can be negative. We say the good things in prayer. Even when I'm apologizing to God, I recognize where I've gone wrong and I'm apologizing, right? So prayer is a moment that brings you back, basically that filters your thoughts as well. So by the time I move away from the quiet time, I know exactly who I am. I know exactly the kind of thoughts that I'm going to think in a day. And throughout the day, I check against that message of the morning whether what I'm thinking about or the kind of conversations that I'm having are adding or subtracting to the message that God told me in the morning during my quiet time. Right? So the second thing that I do is I spend a day or an hour. I don't know what it would allow in your schedule, right? I don't have kids at the moment, so I'm able, and I'm staying at home right now. I'm able to sit the whole day in the house and be alone when my husband is at work, right? So for you, it could be maybe an hour when you are driving to work, or 30 minutes when you're coming back from work, where you can just be alone in your thoughts. Even if you're in a taxi, I've seen people having earphones at times, right? Just to put those things on, even if you're not playing music, but just to be quiet with your thoughts. So I found that the more I practice that, the more I start recognizing even the limiting thoughts that I have. When the house is quiet, no music, no social media, no TV, no nothing, just me and my thoughts. I know for some people that can be a scary place to be, right? Because there are so many things that we go through, and you prefer the noise in order to make sure that you subside those thoughts or those memories that can pitch up if you start listening to your thoughts. But in finance, I worked in finance for a long time, and the worst thing that you can ever do for your finances is to hide your face and not look into what's going on exactly in your bank account, right? It doesn't matter how bad things are. The best way to start fixing things is to look into your bank account. It doesn't matter where you are, how bad things are. If you face the reality of your finances, then it will scare you enough to realize that you need to do something about it. So sometimes that's what we need to do as well with our emotional well-being. If you know that there are so many things that you've been running away from, they will overtake you. They will control you for as long as you refuse to face them. At times, facing them might be very difficult, might be very draining. But when you know what's in here, then you know what kind of help, first of all, you might need. Maybe you might realize that these things that you are going through, you'll need a professional help, for example, in order to sort through the emotions. Then that's exactly what you need. You need. Then that's exactly what you do, right? So it is important not to run away from what's going on the inside if you want to have a peaceful life. So I switch off everything, and the whole day I will do my house chores. Maybe if I'm doing my house chores, I'll do my house chores the whole day, just listening to my thoughts. And it is from that a habit of listening to my thoughts that I realize how many limiting thoughts. I used to have negative thoughts, judgmental thoughts, self-righteous thoughts. I discovered that I was judgmental during that habit of just, doing my house chores while listening to my thoughts, because I realized my thoughts were mainly based on what somebody else is doing. How could she do that? Why would he do that? I was focusing so much on the outside, and when I looked at myself, I had this self-righteous thoughts about myself that I make no mistakes. I didn't even realize that thinking about other people's mistake constantly, that's to a certain level a judgmental attitude if I'm not going to talk to them about it, right? So I found that there were so many negative things that were going on in my head that I wasn't even aware of. But from the practice of just switching off everything and being in my thoughts for a day or an hour, then I started recognizing that I actually have thoughts that I don't want to have. And I started training my mind to think positively, or to think more about me and how I can improve myself. And how I did that, basically, if I recognize a negative thought, I will try and replace it with something positive that I've decided during my quiet time. I'll say in my quiet time, I saw that I needed to work on my attitude. If I start having a bad attitude or thoughts of bad attitude, then I would say to myself, okay, no, that's not what I learned this morning. I need to bring in a more positive attitude. If I can't think positively, then I would start speaking it out loud, speak something positive to remind myself that I need to be thinking positive thoughts. And I found that the more I started speaking out loud, the more I started developing the kind of thoughts that I wanted to think about my life, right? And lastly, the one thing that I enjoy doing is long drives, right? For those of you who are not driving, it could be long walks alone, right? For me, I would going to work. I used to work in Sandton while staying in Hartbeespoort, and there were road works. So I took 2 hours to work and 2 hours coming back. And I would use one of those 2 hours, to driving to work or back, just to switch off the radio and be in my thoughts. And when I take long drives, that's when I start dreaming again. I use those long drives to think mainly about my future, to think how I want things to look like, how I want my life to look like, the kind of house I want to stay in, the kind of family I want to have, the kind of mother I want to be to my kids, the kind of a wife I want to be to my husband, everything that is about me, not expecting people to be something. In those drives, I don't think about what kind of husband I want. No, I focus on the service that I can give to those around me. What kind of a friend do I want to be? What kind of work do I want to engage in, right? So those are the kind of things that I do when I switch off the radio during those long drives. And it has been so important to me, because it was during one of those drives that my purpose was made clear. I was listening to a motivational speaker, and something dropped in my spirit. My purpose at that moment got so clear, I switched off the radio quickly to try and figure out what God was telling me in that moment. And for an hour, I was listening. I was just listening to God, sharing what the purpose is and the vision for my life was. I actually found while driving to work in those long drives, right? So those are the 3 things that I do to make sure that I sift through the noise, so that when I get into spaces that feed me some information, then I already know what kind of information I will let through my ears and into my soul, right? And what kind of information I need to block out. And as well, these have helped me to prioritize my time, to think what kind of things I can allow to take my attention, and what kind of things I won't allow to draw my attention away from my own plans. So I hope these will help you. And if you don't mind, please share what you do to make sure that you sift through the noise that you experience in an everyday basis. Put your comments down below. I would love to hear from you. I am Pulaa Montz, your inner peace and purpose coach.